Gentlemen, we're nearing us the end of 2025 and this year has been packed with new fragrance releases. There have been countless new fragrances. I've smelled hundreds of fragrances and rated hundreds of fragrances, and I simply cannot put all of them into one video. But what I'm going to do in this very video is to give you my top 40 fragrances of 2025 from worst to best. And since they are in the top 40, they're amongst some of the best fragrances of the year in my opinion. So gentlemen, buckle up, get your favorite snacks, get your favorite drink. Let's not waste any more time and let's begin this video. On the 40th spot we have Mancera Xplicit Vanilla. Xplicit Vanilla is this delicious vanilla centric fragrance with some woody, some sugary nuances, and the longer you wait for it dry down, the creamier, softer the vanilla gets and more simplified it's gonna be. It starts off very sweet, very vanilla centric with some slight woody compounds there. This is delicious, it's opulent, it's strong but not too strong, and it has this typical Mancera slightly synthetic edge to it, which gives it some character and a type of DNA. You're getting a somewhat gourmand leaning vanilla fragrance with some woody leathery compounds with a creamy woody vanilla heavy dry down. This is super delicious, super simple scent wise with some minor nuance of something else hiding in there. But in my opinion, this is one of the very best Mancera fragrances out there. On my skin, Mancera Xplicit Vanilla lasts 12 plus hours with an arm's length of projection for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble, which at some point dries to a mild skin scent. And I've given Mancera Xplicit Vanilla a 9 out of 10 men's improvement rating. High quality stuff from Mancera with still some of their DNA hanging in there. If you haven't tried this one already and you like vanilla, you need to check this one out for sure. On the 39th spot, Headspace Safran. This is a very spicy, warm, leathery, dark fragrance with some aromatic and herbal touches in there. Since this is very saffron centric, this is very leathery, very spicy, very oriental and perhaps Middle Eastern leaning, but with the aromatic and slightly herbal touches there, it gives you this calmness, this softness, while at the same time being very dark, very dominant. The leathery nuances here give you a very dark, somewhat dry base, but throughout the lifetime of the fragrance you're going to get this very warm spiciness with some slightly green aromatic herbal touches to soften it down but still give you something that's still contrasting but complementing the very warm dark saffron here to give you some type of coziness but in a very potent way. In the late dry down you almost get this herbal tea or mate tea like nuance and dry down, which I really enjoy. On my skin, Headspace Safran lasts 12 plus hours with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Headspace Safran a 9 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Beautiful stuff if you love spicy fragrances. This is super nice and very unique. Number 38, Byredo Bois Obscur. This fragrance took me by surprise in general. This is very dark, very potent, very dominant, because this is, even though there's not any rose in it, it gives off this rose and oud type of vibe, with it being somewhat woody, spicy and sweet at the top, but with a very Middle Eastern oud, sandalwood, ambery base. This is very strong, very dominating, but still at the same time somewhat appealing but still slightly challenging fragrance. On my skin, Byredo Bois Obscur lasts 12 plus hours with projection being 1 to 2 meters for around half an hour or so, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble for around an hour more, which in the end dries to a mild skin scent. Surprising stuff from Byredo, and I've given Byredo Bois Obscur a 9 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Really nice surprise if you like a typical rose and oud fragrances. Number 37, Loewe Bittersweet Oud, with a huge surprise this year in my opinion. This starts off with a very bitter, juicy, rindy, zesty opening with a bunch of citruses, mainly bitter orange, that quickly gets swallowed by earthy notes and an oud accord, giving you a very dark, deep, dense and dominant and almost soil-like darkness here, which is super unique, and this is no joke. It's very strong, and the contrasts here are so unique to smell, because from 1 hour to the next, this changes from a very juicy, very bright citrusy fragrance with some edge to it to quickly becoming a very dark, earthy, woody scent. On my skin, Loewe Bittersweet Oud lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. This fragrance is no joke, and I've given Loewe Bittersweet Oud a 9 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Such an incredible fragrance right here. Number 36, Atelier Novae Vanilla. This is a concoction of 3 different vanillas, giving you this insanely complex, sweet, dense, vanilla-like scent, but contrasted with some woody, leathery compounds. And at the top, you have some Mimosa Absolute to give you some of this yellow smelling, floral, fluffy, powdery texture, and some mineral notes at the top as well to give you this cold smelling, slightly salty contrast to give you this very complex take on a vanilla fragrance. You will not find many fragrances out there smelling like this one here. Perhaps something from the same house, but at the same time, this is so unique, so complex, yet such an easy wear, especially if you love vanilla fragrances that are out there and very different and complex. On my skin, Atelier Novae Vanilla lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Atelier Novae Vanilla a 9 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Such a stunner right here. Number 35, Amouage Opus Timber. This to me smells very typically Amouage-esque. This is very woody, dark, smoky, with the frankincense here to my nose being the center of attention as in typical Amouage fashion, but at the top you have a slight sweetness coming from cacao and some distinctive spiciness coming from different spices at the top to give you this woody, spicy, dark sensation. But to my nose and in my experience on my skin, this is not one of Amouage's strongest fragrances. So if you want something very smoky, dark, woody, very masculine leaning with a pinch of sweetness and spiciness at the top, this could be something for you. And this to my nose, since this isn't the strongest Amouage fragrance on my skin, I find this to be very versatile and perhaps signature scent worthy if you want that from Amouage but you don't want something fresh and clean. On my skin, Amouage Opus Timber lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dried to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Amouage Opus Timber a 9 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Check it out if you haven't already and if you want an Amouage as a signature scent. Number 34, it's Headspace Acacia. Acacia is going to be a very sweet vanilla fragrance, but with some different twists and touches in there to give you a very distinctive, somewhat unique, and perhaps a mass appealing scent here. It has some mimosa at the top to give you some texture. It has some davana to give you a sweet, woody, and perhaps boozy touch here, with the vanilla and woody ambers in the base to give you a very dense, strong, warm scent here, with contrasting nuances that give you an almost indescribable vanilla scent here. Acacia from Headspace, in my experience, is one of the most mass appealing and fan favorite fragrances from the line. When I smelled them back at the Brands of Beauty Olfactory Day, this was the majority favorite from most people smelling these fragrances. So this has a mass appeal to it while still being a very complex, different vanilla fragrance for sure. On my skin, Headspace Acacia lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that you can pick up here and there, which in the end dries to a mild skin scent. And I've given Headspace Acacia a 9.1 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Check this one out if you want a different vanilla fragrance. Number 33, a surprise from Byredo, and that is Alto Astral. This has become my favorite Byredo fragrance because this has so much going on. This has a coconut water accord combined with incense, combined with sandalwood. So it starts off with the coconut water accord consisting of coconutty compounds and aldehydes, specifically aldehyde C18, giving you this creamy, almost milky, coconutty, fruity scent, which also smells very fluffy and clean, with the incense giving you a smoky, dark, and dominant contrast, giving you a very strong and opulent scent. And in the dry down, you're going to pick up on some sandalwood, giving you a creamy, woody base that blends very well with the top notes, giving you an overall very well blended scent with lots of contrast and complexity. This has become my favorite Byredo fragrance for a reason, because this is strong, smoky, dark, with a contrasting, exotic, tropical, coconutty scent. On my skin, Byredo Alto Astral lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. Super interesting stuff, and my favorite Byredo fragrance for a reason, and I've given Byredo Alto Astral a 9.1 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Such a stunner. Number 32, by Kilian Angel Share on the Rocks. A more fresh, citrusy, sparkly, and colder smelling take on the Angel Share DNA, with aldehydes which consist of this on the rocks accord, giving you a frozen, icy, cold sensation, combined with citruses at the top to give you a sparkly lemon zest like scent, combined with the very sweet, boozy, slightly woody scent of Angel Share. This is a fresher take on the Angel Share DNA, made to perfection in my opinion. This is an amazing fragrance, especially if you're looking for a more versatile, icy, fresh take on the Angel Share DNA. On my skin, by Kilian Angel Share on the Rocks lasts 8 to 10 hours, with projection being a moderate scent bubble that has amazing sea ice that can be picked up from many meters away for around an hour or two, which then dries to a mild skin scent. Very interesting stuff right here, and a perfect execution from By Kilian, and I've given By Kilian Angel Share on the Rocks a 9.1 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Impeccable stuff right here. Number 31, Sospiro Il Padrino. This is one of my personal favorite releases of 2025, and I love this stuff so much. This takes the fruity Sospiro DNA but makes it more warm, comfortable, slightly more woody, sophisticated, and perhaps something more suited for the colder weather. This is fruity at the top with a slight touch of sweet booziness coming from amaretto, which is then developed by some woody patchouli and warm amber to give you this warm, sensual, comfortable, slightly boozy scent. And Il Padrino, meaning the Godfather, smells very sophisticated, very elegant, but still with the Sospiro DNA being there through and through. I love this stuff so much, also because this is somewhat potent in a very comfortable way. On my skin, Sospiro Il Padrino lasts 10 to 12 hours, the projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that comes and goes, and at some point it dries to a mild skin scent. But in the first couple of hours, this has incredible sillage and a scent bubble that comes and goes, lingers for many hours, and I've given Sospiro Il Padrino a 9.1 out of 10 men's improvement rating. I'm so delighted that the founder of Sospiro, Sala Alzaroni, gifted me this bottle back in February at Essence 2025, and I will cherish this bottle until the very last drop for sure. 1/4 the way, on spot number 30, it's going to be Matiere Première Vanilla Powder Extrait de Parfum. This is a very interesting improvement on the vanilla powder DNA. Even though I find the original to be better than this one, it's still a very interesting take on it. This fragrance is going to be much more balsamic, and the powderiness from coconut is not as present. It is there for sure, but clashing with the very balsamic, woody, sweet vanilla, it gives off almost a soapy opening, which gives off a very weird yet unique contrast to the vanilla. But whenever it starts to dry and develop, this becomes creamy, balsamic, warm, and somewhat oriental, to be honest. With there, even though it's not listed, it almost gives off a myrrh, dark, balsamic creaminess, with the vanilla here smelling more complex and perhaps smokier due to the balsamic touches there as well. Such an interesting take on vanilla powder. Not what I expected, but it's definitely a take that I enjoy smelling, and I am very lucky to have a lab sample of the fragrance before it got launched. On my skin, Matiere Première Vanilla Powder Extrait de Parfum lasts 24 hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate moderate scent bubble where you can pick up the scent here and there, which at some point dries to a mild skin scent that lingers till the next day on my skin. Super interesting take on the vanilla powder DNA, and I've given vanilla powder Extrait de Parfum a 9.2 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Definitely try this one out, and please layer this with the original Eau de Parfum as well when you try it to get an insane layering. On spot number 29, I have Tom Ford Black Orchid Reserve. To my nose, this smells very similar to the original Black Orchid, but it's made stronger, less sweet, more earthy, and generally amped up with there being more volume, more density, more projection, and generally more of everything here. It has the typical Black Orchid accord with ylang ylang giving you this yellow floral distinctive sweetness combined with the dark earthy truffle and the chocolatey dark woody earthy patchouli in the base give off this iconic, distinctive and divisive Black Orchid scent. But compared to the original nowadays, it's amped up, and in my opinion this is superior to the original one nowadays. On my skin, Tom Ford Black Orchid Reserve lasts 10 to 12 hours with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that comes and goes for around an hour more, which then quickly dries to a mild skin scent. I love this stuff because I love Black Orchid, and this one is just made stronger than the original nowadays, and I've given Tom Ford Black Orchid Reserve a 9.2 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Lovely stuff, Tom Ford. Lovely stuff. Number 28, Borntostandout Black Guava. This fragrance starts off very sour, very tropical, and to my nose slightly unpleasant with a moist spiciness almost, with there being a lot of oud in there. This gives off a very waxy, very weird guava, almost rotten guava scent, which the brand intended to do, with there being 50 to 60% perfume oil, which gives off this overripe, almost rotten sour guava scent, which smells very, very unique and very divisive and slightly unpleasant. But the more you wait, the better this fragrance gets, with the oud here giving you a smoother, more pleasant contrast to the guava, which in the end gives off this tropical, slightly sour, distinctive guava scent with a very dark woody oud here. You need to like very sour fruity fragrances to enjoy this one, and this is very divisive, so please try before you buy. On my skin, Borntostandout Black Guava lasts 12 plus hours with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. If you put this on your clothing, this will last you days on end because this is so concentrated, and I've given Borntostandout Black Guava a 9.2 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Very divisive, possibly not enjoyed by everyone, but definitely very unique and insanely well crafted. Number 27, Amouage Decision. Amouage Decision to my nose smells also very typically Amouage, with this being very woody, very dry, very smoky and frankincense focused, with there being this distinctive and contrasting cleanly nuance up there at the top with some spiciness as well to give you this aromatic freshness that is quickly backed up and almost swallowed up by the woody, balsamic, metallic, sharp smokiness coming from frankincense. If you want one of the perhaps more versatile, more masculine leaning Amouage fragrances that can perhaps be a signature scent worthy fragrance, Amouage Decision is definitely one I can highly recommend, because on some people this is even fresher on skin, so this can perhaps be a versatile fragrance for some. But if you want the typical Amouage presence of frankincense, it is in there for you. On my skin, Amouage Decision lasts 12 plus hours with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. Lovely stuff from Amouage, very high quality, and I've given Amouage Decision a 9.2 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Lovely stuff by Quinton Biche in collaboration with Amouage. Number Number 26, one of the most unique, divisive, and interesting fragrance releases of the year, Borntostandout Black Karak. Black Karak is this very dark, sticky, dirty, camphorous, and waxy smelling scent that gives off this very dark, herbal tea-like scent with a lot of spiciness coming from saffron. But the longer you wait, the more interesting this is going to get, because the waxy, dirty darkness starts to blend with the base of a very dark oud and some lactonic notes in there to give you almost a waxy, camphorous, milky oud scent with a pinch of vanilla and some spiciness. So imagine a very, very thick, dark tea with oud and a pinch of milk in there, topped off with some saffron in there. This is so unique, so divisive, very challenging, but at the same time it is so interesting because the opening is very off-putting for the majority of people, but the longer you wait, the more interesting this fragrance is going to get. On my skin, Borntostandout Black Karak lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length around an hour, then dries to a moderate scent that lingers for many hours, and at some point dries to a very mild skin scent. You need to like oud and very waxy, dark, dirty fragrance to enjoy this one. But nonetheless, I've given Borntostandout Black Karak a 9.3 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Such a unique fragrance, this one. Number 25, one of my favorite releases of 2025 as well, is going to be Goldfield and Banks Tales of Amber. This is a contrast of warm ambers and cold ambers combined with a creamy, powdery orris butter. This is an iris lover's dream that has at the same time a powdery and airy scent while still having a voluminous, dense substantiality to it. This is ambery, warm, a little spicy, combined with a very creamy, buttery, slightly powdery iris, but in the base you have some of this Australian oud and oud accord, some sandalwood to give you this creamy, woody edge to it. But the main player here is also the ambergris here, giving you a cold amber sensation, contrasting the warmth here, giving you a cold, airy lift to contrast the warmth with something cold to give you a truly a unique experience, even though this reminds me of other irisy, woody scents and something that can be signature scent worthy if you like something with iris and something ambery. On my skin, Goldfield and Banks Tales of Amber lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being an arm's length around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble and at some point dries to a mild skin scent. I find myself being nose blind to this stuff from time to time, and I know that some other people this lasts 12 hours plus, but nonetheless I've given Goldfield and Banks Tales of Amber a 9.3 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Beautiful stuff right here, and perhaps my favorite Goldfield and Banks fragrance. Number 24, Yves Saint Laurent Muse. This is right up my alley. This is, to my nose, a very sweet, creamy, iris dominant scent, but it has this ink accord in the base that gives you this dark, dense, slightly smoky, amber, woody, musky touch to the iris. So it's not just this light, airy, powdery iris, it's this creamy, powdery iris with a dark, deep, dense, woody inkiness here, which I really enjoy. It gives you contrast, it gives you something unique, and it gives you a base that the fragrance can live off of, project, and give you airiness, while at the same time being substantial and complex. This is one of Yves Saint Laurent's best work in my opinion. Smells super high quality while still being something out of the ordinary, but still pleasant to smell in my opinion. On my skin, Yves Saint Laurent Muse lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being an arm's length around half an hour or so, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. I have given Yves Saint Laurent Muse a 9.3 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Wow, 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 especially if you love iris. Number 23 is Spiritica Lynch, aka Smoked Styrax. I was so fortunate to try this fragrance out at Essence 2025 in February before its formal launch, and it was one of my favorites from from the show, and I'm so happy that anyone else can try this now, because this is so complex, so dark, so niche and unique. This is sweet, smoky, dark, balsamic. It starts off very sweet with there being a cake accord, which is very quickly swallowed and dominated by real tobacco absolute and different types of tobacco, and in very high concentration, giving you this very, very dry, while at the same time moist, dark, sweetened tobacco in a very oriental and raw way, combined with the styrax and benzoin, giving you this very balsamic, smoky addition to it, giving you a very dense, very challenging, complex scent profile that is sweet with a very smoky, very balsamic, tobacco heavy scent. This is not for the faint of heart, and you need to like tobacco fragrances, very, very dominating tobacco fragrances, to enjoy and understand this fragrance. On my skin, Spiritica Lynch, aka smoked styrax, lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate and in the end the mild skin scent. This will sit denser on some people's skin than others due to the 35% perfume oil concentration, but nonetheless this is so dark and so unique, and the perception of niche fragrances for some. And I have given Spiritica Lynch, aka smoked styrax, a 9.3 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Such a weird yet fun fragrance to wear. Number 22, Aaron Terence Hughes Riviera Maya. This is one of his limited edition releases of 2025 for summer, and I'm so happy I got to discover it before the year ended. This is a very tropical, exotic, fresh, slightly sweet and fruity fragrance, with there being a very distinctive and fun banana accord here, giving you this fun, tropical, exotic vibe, combined with salt and oceanic notes later in the dry down, giving you a very subtle, soft, airy, almost saltwater feel, giving you this very oceanic, bright, summery feel, which then dries completely to a very airy, soft, fresh and clean scent with hints of fruity sweetness. This is a joy to wear, because this does not disappear quickly. This one has the 35% perfume oil concentration. It has the typical Aaron Terence Hughes density and strength to it, but in a very pleasant, fun, beachy, exotic scent here. This is so fun to wear, and I cannot wait to mention this more often in videos for the spring and summer. On my skin, Aaron Terence Hughes Riviera Maya lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Aaron Terence Hughes Riviera Maya a 9.3 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. So fun. Number 21, it's Balenciaga Incense Perfumum. Balenciaga Incense Perfumum has a scent profile that I really enjoy. Dark, balsamic, smoky fragrance with a complementary aldehyde freshness and softness. So this is very smoky, metallic, cold smelling fragrance with an additional cleanliness, softness and airiness, which goes together so well. On some people this is much darker, much more smoky and not clean whatsoever, but on my skin and in my experience, this has this perfect blend of dark, gothic, church-like smokiness and soft, clean aldehydes. On my skin, Balenciaga Incense Perfumum lasts 13 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and at some point a mild skin scent. Super interesting stuff, and if you want something very frankincense heavy, but something you can wear on a daily basis, perhaps with a touch of smooth cleanliness, give this one a try if you haven't already. And I've given Balenciaga Incense Perfumum a 9.3 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Wow, what a surprise from Balenciaga. Halfway point with spot number 20 going to Balenciaga Cristobal 2025. This is right up my alley, with this being a chocolatey oud patchouli scent, giving off this very linear, mossy, dark, woody, earthy, chocolatey-esque scent, with the patchouli and oud going hand in hand together, giving you this smoky, woody, dark, earthy, chocolatey, patchouli scent, but it has this Balenciaga vintage-esque scent, which for some reason all of their fragrances have. I don't know how they did it, but this fragrance comes off very vintage-esque with the patchouli oud combo having some type of old aged like sensation here. So it is going to be this typical chocolatey patchouli scent, but it has this vintage undescribable scent profile combined with the woody chocolatey oud patchouli scent. On my skin, Balenciaga Cristobal lasts 9 to 11 hours, with projection being moderate with a very noticeable scent bubble for 2 to 3 hours, which then dries to a mild skin scent. Not the strongest fragrance in the world with this type of scent profile, but it's still very noticeable. And I've given Balenciaga Cristobal 2025 a 9.4 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Lovely stuff, especially if you love patchouli. On the 19th spot, I have Fugazi Passion Fruit. If you love Oud Maracuja but want something with real oud that smells slightly more natural than Oud Maracuja, this is something just for you. This is sweet, tropical, fruity and exotic with a very dark, woody, deep, dense and balsamic oud with cypriol to enhance the oud even more, make it even darker, even stronger and perhaps more balsamic and more dirty, to give it more edge, to give it more density and to give it an even stronger backbone than the oud already is in the first place. There's also this Gurjam balsam which gives you this very dark balsamic density, which gives the fragrance a sticky dark sensation that amps up the passion fruit stickiness and sweetness even more. This smells very complete, and if you want something not as strong as Oud Maracuja but more natural smelling, then this is something just for you. It's not as strong, but definitely a strong contender for an alternative. On my skin, Fugazi Passion Fruit lasts 12 plus hours, with longevity being an arm's length around an hour or so, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble and at some point a mild skin scent. This is my second favorite Fugazi fragrance, and I've given Fugazi Passion Fruit a 9.4 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. On the 18th spot, Theodoros Karottinis Marzipan Gourmand. This is very sweet, very nutty and very textured, with a sub smell of cherry here due to the heavy amount of heliotropin and coumarin, giving you this cherry fruity sweetness that accompanies this very nutty, very textured, dense marzipan or nougat scent here, which gives you all the character that you want from this fragrance. This is very strong, very sweet. If you want a fragrance that smells as close to nougat or marzipan as humanly possible, this is your best bet. This is long lasting, it's projecting, it's strong, and it's somewhat linear. The fruitiness here disappears from the top to base, but the texture here stays the same. It is very affordable for the high quality that you're getting. On my skin, Theodoros Karottinis Marzipan Gourmand lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length around half an hour or so, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Theodoros Karottinis Marzipan Gourmand a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Such a stunner for the price. If you want something that smells like marzipan with a hint of cherry, this one right here is the one. On the 17th spot, Danam Mooncake. This is a gourmand that I did not expect would smell as good as it does. This is very thick, very syrupy, very dense and sweet, with the dominance here coming from honey and a syrup accord. In my opinion, this smells like a creme brulee, which develops to smelling like a melted creme brulee, because this has a very unique feature with this fragrance having a change of texture the longer you let it dry. So it starts off smelling very, very sticky, very honeyed, but the longer you wait, the creamier the scent becomes, while still maintaining this ambery, warm, honeyed scent, which still is very sweet, but it becomes creamier, more buttery, and perhaps more ambery warm compared to the honey sticky sweetness. It's still very sweet throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance, but it goes from a sticky syrupy honey to a creamy sticky sweet butter. This is so delicious, so yummy, so honey dominant, but on some people's skin this will come off slightly animalic because of the honey. On some people, honey is generally somewhat of an animalic scent, but this is nonetheless an incredible gourmand that smells very natural, not synthetic whatsoever. So if you're looking for a very high quality gourmand that's still strong but not in any way synthetic, you need to try Mooncake out. On my skin, Danam Mooncake lasts 13 plus hours, with projection being a very solid scent bubble for 1 to 2 hours plus, which at some point dries to a mild skin scent that lingers for many hours on end. I've given Danam Mooncake a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. This stuff is addictive, yummy, and one of the best honey fragrances you will find. On the 16th spot, I have Headspace Tabac. Headspace Tabac took me by surprise because yes, this is a very tobacco heavy fragrance, but it is accompanied by one of the best espresso accords I've ever smelled. This is very coffee dominant, with the tobacco amping it up even more and giving it a warm, spicy, dry, dark facet. So it starts off very creamy, very bitter coffee-esque, with the tobacco in the background giving you some density, some edge to it, which gives you some volume as well and density. But the longer you wait, the drier the tobacco gets, the more the coffee disappears and the more vanilla comes through to give you some sweetness, to contrast the drying tobacco that becomes more and more dry the longer you wait. This is such a pleasant wear, such a compliment puller as well, and such a strong dominant scent in the air. On my skin, Headspace Tabac lasts 12 plus hours easily, with an arm's length of projection, while at the same time giving off incredible sillage for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that comes and goes, and in the end it dries to a mild skin scent. This is top tier stuff, especially if you love tobacco, but you don't want the tobacco fragrance that is typical. You want something that is very different from the rest, and I've given Headspace Tabac a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. This is so good and one of Headspace's very best. On the 15th spot, I have Borntostandout Dirty Milk. Dirty Milk is this dense, thick, sweet, lactonic fragrance with a bit of iris there to give you this powdery, soft, smooth texture to the very lactonic, dense, thick milk. But you can also find some transparent yet dense, woody akigala wood to give you a transparent yet detectable density to amp up the volume and tenacity of the fragrance in general. But overall, you're going to get a very caramelized, milky scent, with the caramel here giving you a warm, ambery sensation with the lactonic creaminess and smoothness to give you a very cozy, sweet, milky scent. This is one of the best milk fragrances I've smelled, not because it smells realistically of milk, but because of the texture that it has, with the very cozy milky nuance there as well at the top, which is present throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance. So imagine a lump of toffee and caramel inside a dense, thick milk. Sounds weird, but the scent is impeccable in my opinion. On my skin, Borntostandout Dirty Milk lasts 12 plus hours, with the projection being a moderate scent bubble for a good amount of hours, with sillage that comes and goes, and in the end it dries to a mild but detectable skin scent. This lasts hours and hours on end and is surprisingly strong for a milk fragrance, which they're typically not. And I've given Borntostandout Dirty Milk a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. One of Borntostandout best fragrances in my opinion. On the 14th spot, I have Aaron Terence Hughes Requiem. Requiem is this very dark, ambery, spicy, woody scent that is mostly very sticky, sweet, but with a dark, ambery, balsamic touch that also has a faint, dark, slightly animalic touch due to the synthetic civet in the base, but mostly it's a vanilla fragrance enveloped in many different ambery compounds, backed up by some woods with a spicy top, but the ambery nuances are here throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance, giving you a very sticky, deep, dense, sweet ambery scent and some slightly animalic musk to give you even more darkness, which this fragrance is all about. Such an amazing, well blended scent. If you like warm, spicy, ambery scents, this will be right something up your alley. On my skin, Erin Terrence Hugh's Requiem lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that dries to a mild skin scent. I am so pleasantly surprised as always with Erin's stuff, but this one is also one of the heavy hitters in my opinion, and I've given Erin Terrence Hugh's Requiem a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. So pleasantly surprised. Check this one out if you can. On the 13th spot, I have Emporio Armani Stronger With You Parfum. This is a very mature version of the Stronger With You DNA, being very strong, very dense, very sweet, with the caramel and chestnut DNA here. This is typical Stronger With You, but amplified to the max in terms of intensity and depth, with their just lacking something. Even though this is an incredible fragrance in my opinion, very versatile, very modern, and typically Stronger With You, very compliment pulling and mass appealing, there is just something missing. Nonetheless, this is an incredible fragrance with the nuttiness here, the sweetness, and the overdose of ethyl maltol, giving you this vanilla-like sensation that smells very sweet, very dense, very thick and creamy in the base whenever this gets to dry. On my skin, Emporio Armani Stronger With You Parfum lasts 12 plus hours easily, with projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for the first couple of hours, with great sillage, which at some point dries to a moderate and Indian the mild skin scent. And I've given Emporio Armani Stronger With You Parfum a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. You really cannot go wrong with this one. On the 12th spot, I have Amouage Purpose 50. One of my best reviews of the year and one of the most surprising fragrances of the year for me from Amouage. This is a very spicy, green, woody, woodsy fragrance with the signature Amouage frankincense. This is very smoky, very green, very woodsy, with the papyrus here giving you a distinctive green additional smokiness here, with the pimento pepper at the top to give you a spicy opening that quickly dries to a woody, smoky, woodsy scent that almost smells like a forest that is almost on fire. The longer you wait, the sweeter and smoother this becomes, but it definitely has this smoky, woodsy quality throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance, but it starts to smoothen out and be less spicy the more you have it on your skin. And in general, this is one heck of a powerhouse of a fragrance. This is very dense, very thick, highly concentrated, with there being 50% perfume oil in this fragrance, which is an incredible feat here in terms of both the scent but also the density and tenacity of this fragrance. On my skin, Amouage Purpose 50 lasts 12 plus hours minimum, with a projection being 1 to 2 meters plus, with great sillage, which dries to a moderate scent with a decent scent bubble, which dries to a mild but very noticeable skin scent that lingers hours and hours on end. Put this on your clothes or some type of fabric and this lasts for days minimum. And I've given Amouage Purpose 50 a 9.5 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. One of Amouage's best fragrances in my opinion, and perhaps one of the best green, smoky, woodsy fragrances out there, if not the best one. On the 11th spot, I have one of my favorite Amouage fragrances from now on. That is Amouage Existence. Fresh, soft and floral, with there being some aldehydes to give you some distinctive softness and freshness, combined with lily of the valley raw materials and a dewy green rose to give you a clean, soft, almost fluffy white floral sensation, with the rose amping it up even more, but the aldehydes give you some of this clean, soft, fluffy freshness, but the frankincense and woody compounds in the base that Amouage always use is present, giving you substantiality, giving you density, vitality, giving you tenacity, and generally something of deep, dense, and heavy nature. This is so well blended, so complex, yet so likable, so easy to pull off, and so versatile. You could signature scent this both as a woman or as a man, especially if you like floral fragrances that are also packed with character and some smoky depth. On my skin, Amouage existence lasts 12 plus hours minimum, with projection being 1 to 2 meters for around an hour or two, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble for around an hour more, which then dries to a mild but noticeable skin scent. One of my favorite Amouages of all time, and I've given Amouage existence a 9.6 out of 10 men's improvement rating. I'm on a hunt for a bottle of this. I need this in my collection because this is a stunner. So gentlemen, top 10 territory. On the 10th spot, I have Borntostandout Chocoloco. This is a fragrance that I would like to call a gentle monster. This is soft, airy, creamy, with there being a very distinctive and heavy amount of cacao, giving you this chocolate cookie-esque scent or soft, creamy, almost melted milk chocolate scent that gives off this sweet, soft, creamy sensation. But at the same time, even though this is airy and soft, this has an insane amount of projection. This projects so well and so strong, but in the best way possible. This is very gourmand, very sweet, very cacao, buttery, milky, smooth, but not in any synthetic way whatsoever. This is one of the highest quality, most well blended gourmands I've ever smelled, with cacao being a heavy component here, giving you the softest milk chocolate scent humanly possible, with some buttery, milky sensations coming through the longer you let it dry on your skin. Somewhat linear, but the more you wait, the more buttery and milky this becomes and less chocolatey. But the chocolate nuances are here throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance, just depends on how much. On my skin, Borntostandout Chocoloco lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for 3 to 4 hours or so on my skin, with it settling to a moderately mild scent bubble, and in the end dries to a very mild skin scent. Even though this is airy, soft, and gentle, it is a monster at the same time, hence the gentle monster nickname. And I've given Borntostandout Chocoloco a 9.6 out of 10 men's improvement rating. So incredibly delicious, so gentle and soft, but at the same time so strong. Number 9 is Headspace Oud. My favorite Headspace out of them all, because this is one of the best fruity oud fragrances you will find out there, period. This has a pear, but mostly a distinct caramelized roasted pineapple accord at the top, giving you a sour but pleasant, juicy, jammy, caramelized, fruity, exotic smell at the top, coming from the pineapple here being very ripe and very juicy, combined with the funky, dark, woody oud, giving you an exotic, tropical oud scent that at the same time has this leathery, dark, woody, dirty funk, but it's balanced out with some floral compounds to make it softer, and this very fun, tropical, exotic pineapple pear combo, giving you this sour, ripe, juicy, sweet, almost pineapple jammy scent at the top, which is there throughout the entire lifetime of the fragrance to balance out the funky oud. I can imagine this being very fun to wear in the high heat if you really want to stand out in a slightly more Middle Eastern way with a fruity oud scent. On my skin, Headspace Oud lasts 12 plus hours easily, with projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for a handful of hours, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. I've given Headspace Oud and 9.6 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Number 8, I have by Kilian Angel Share Paradis. This is a fruitier, more sugary, sweet version of the Angel Share DNA. You have this woody, sweet, boozy scent here, but it's amplified by even more sweetness. But at the top, you're going to have this sugary, textured, almost raspberry liqueur accord combined with the cognac here, giving you an even denser, even smoother, but at the same time more textured, sweeter, more sugary version of the Angel Share DNA. Even though this is more expensive, some people might find this better or worse depending on if you think it's too sweet or too sugary, but I find this to be equally as good as the original, but it is a fun twist to the DNA. And if you want something even longer lasting, because this is a monster on skin. On my skin, by Kilian Angel Share Paradis lasts 24 hours plus, with projection being an arm's length around an hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that lingers for a couple of more hours with insane sillage for many hours to come, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. This scent lingers for lots of hours and it's a compliment magnet with incredible sillage. And I've given by Kilian Angel Share Paradis a 9.6 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. On the 7th spot, I have Creed Oud Zarian, one of the most expensive releases of 2025, but in my opinion also one of the most highest quality ones. This is insanely strong, opulent, dominating, brooding oud scent with 80-year-old aged oud with a very distinct, somewhat dark, salty licorice scent combined with something that could smell like tobacco, but the oud here is the main part. This is so dark, almost balsamic the way this oud smells, but mostly very dark, deep, dense with a touch of warm spices. Even though it has a funk to it, it's softened by vanilla. It is very potent, very dominating, very dense and thick in the air, yes, but it is at the same time very elegant and sophisticated in a very powerful way. You need to like very strong, very dense and dominatingly dark oud scents to appreciate this one, but it also comes with a huge price tag. But in this case, in Creed standards, I think it is justifiable for the sheer quality that you're getting. On my skin, Creed Oud Zarian lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for the first hour, which then dries to a moderate scent bubble that is clearly there, which at some point after a good amount of hours dries to a mild but noticeable skin scent. Opulence in a bottle in my opinion, and the best Creed fragrance period. I've given Creed Oud Zarian a 9.6 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Brutal is a word that can describe this fragrance. On the 6th spot, I have Theodoros Kaloutinni's Matcha Ice Cream. This smells of a very authentic matcha here, giving you this green, dusty, powdery, almost edible cardboard-like smell. If you've tasted matcha, you know what I mean, but it smells so real and so non-synthetic as ever, with this very creamy, sweet vanillin, ethyl vanillin, vanilla ice cream-like sensation here, giving you the complete package of what the name suggests, matcha ice cream. This is delicious, it's fun, at the same time green, powdery, textured. It's so fun, so unique, such a bargain, such high quality of a fragrance, and I think it's very versatile. I think you can also pull it off as a summer gourmand because it has a touch of freshness to it. It smells like a dessert you would enjoy in the spring and summer when it's hot outside, so I think this in the spring and summer would be a banger for sure. On my skin, Theodoros Kaloutinni's Matcha Ice Cream lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. Not the strongest fragrance in the world, but definitely lasts more than enough. And I've given Theodoros Kaloutinni's Matcha Ice Cream a 9.7 out of 10 minutes improvement rating. Top 5 territory, and perhaps to many people's surprise, I have Armani Privé Queer Nous. Queer Nu is this fragrance that reminds me of Louis Vuitton Ombre Nomade, but in terms of oud you have leather, and in terms of raspberry you have coffee and cardamom. This blend of dark, dense, strong leather and jammy rose combined with a dusty, slightly bitter and warm spicy coffee and cardamom works. This is such an incredibly high quality fragrance from Armani Privé, which took me by surprise for the first time when I smelled it. This is strong, dense, deep, dark, unfortunately not airy and doesn't have a lot of lift, but it definitely has density and volume to it, so it is very dense when you wear it. But the coffee here gives you a somewhat bitter, dusty, powdery sensation here that contrasts the leather rose combo very well, with the cardamom adding slightly more density and warm spice to it, which is super interesting. And whenever it gets to dry and develop, some of the warmer nuances come through to give the leather a little bit more peace and a little bit more level, but giving it this warm, slightly ambery feel. On my skin, Armani Privé Cuir Nu lasts 12 plus hours, with projection being moderate for around an hour with decent sillage, which dries after an hour or so to a mild skin scent. But put this on your clothes and your clothes will smell amazing with great compliment factor. Super surprising release from Armani Privé, and I've given Armani Privé Cuir Nu a 9.8 out of 10 men's improvement rating. This is so slept on, and even though it doesn't have oud in it, you need to try this one out if you're looking for a rose and oud combo with coffee and cardamom. On the fourth spot is LM Parfum or Laurent Maison Parfum Lineum. Lineum is one of the best gourmands I've ever put my nose on. This is filled with texture, filled with density, filled with volume, and there is just so much happening in the best, most delicious way possible. 1 second it smells of crumbled cookies, the second it smells like caramel popcorn, but at the same time you get this sweet, dense booziness that isn't necessarily very boozy, but adds density and sweetness in a very warm, ambery way, combined with even more amberiness, giving you some warmth, and while at the same time giving you lift, volume, and density, with some vanilla in the base to really be the most important form of structure here, giving you a solid, sweet base to amp up the sweetness even more and to give the fragrance a very solid, smooth, sweet dry down whenever this gets to dry and develop fully. On my skin, LM Parfum Laurent Maison Parfum Lineum lasts 15 plus hours, with projection being 1 to 2 meters plus for a good amount of hours, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild but noticeable skin scent. This is delicious, and it's not even enough to describe it already. This is one of the best, most textured gourmand fragrances out there on the market, and for the price that you're paying for this fragrance, it should be priced nearly double in my opinion. But I've given LM Parfum or Laurent Maison Parfum Lineum a 9.8 out of 10 men's improvement rating. It's delicious and you need to try it out if you haven't already. On the third spot, Theodoros Carlotini's Tiramisu. This is impeccable and by far the most photorealistic tiramisu fragrance I've ever smelled. This has a dusty, bittersweet, powdery coffee to it, with a creamy espresso accord that the coffee combines with to give you this smooth, soft coffee-like vibe, with lots of vanilla, lots of other gourmand accords here to give you the full picture of a tiramisu. There's density, there's creaminess, there's a touch of milkiness here as well, a pinch of something that could remind you of a boozy coffee scent here, and lots of coffee here to give you the dusty, bittersweet like nuance that you can find in a real life tiramisu dessert. This is incredible perfumery, incredible in terms of both scent profile, tenacity, longevity and projection, and also in terms of the photorealism of everything. the value for money you're getting for this fragrance is bar none. You won't find any better fragrance for the price, and that is almost guaranteed. On my skin, Theodoros Kalatini's Tiramisu lasts 14 plus hours, with projection being an arm's length for around an hour or so, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent that is still noticeable after many hours has gone by. This is incredible stuff. Theodoros Kalatini's has killed it this year, and I've given Theodoros Kalatini's Tiramisu a 9.9 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Impeccable stuff. On the second spot, the second best fragrance released in 2025 in my opinion is Theodoros Kalatini's Peach Macaroon. This is one of the best gourmands ever released, period. This is fruity, creamy, sweet, has a macaroon crumble cookie-esque nuance, but additionally this is very creamy, dense, thick, almost lactonic in a yogurt way, giving you the sensation of not necessarily a peach macaroon on everyone's skin, but on my skin I get a peach yogurt vibe, which is delicious and unlike anything I've ever smelled. This is not the strongest gourmand ever, but definitely noticeable and by far one of the most delicious ones. The addition of peach here giving you a creamy, lactonic, fruity sweetness combined with the almost whipped cream, custard, vanilla smoothness with this macaroon accord that on some people turns to like a macaroon or crumble cookie with the previously mentioned nuances is unlike anything I've ever smelled. It is beyond delicious and by far and one of the best gourmand fragrances out there on the market, and also my favorite from Theodoros Kalatini's. This is insane. Even though it's not the longest lasting or most powerful gourmand fragrances, it doesn't need to be, because this is incredible right here. On my skin, Theodoros Kalatini's Peach Macaroon lasts 10 to 12 hours, with projection being an arm's length for around half an hour, which then dries to a moderate and in the end a mild skin scent. And I've given Peach Macaroon from Theodoros Kalatini's a 9.9 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Delicious stuff. On the number one spot, the best release of 2025 in my opinion is Borntostandout Black Mango. This might be a huge upset for you guys that are watching, but when I tried this fragrance at Essence 2025 back in February, I said to myself, I need a bottle of this in my collection sooner rather than later. This is the juiciest, strongest, sweetest, most realistically juicy mango fragrance on the market, and by far the strongest one out there. This smells like you take a slightly overripe mango, don't even take a bite, but you squeeze the mango and you can feel and smell the juices of the mango dripping down your forearm. This is incredibly juicy, very tropical and exotic in the strongest possible way due to the Sospiro and Oud here, and of course the 50 to 60% perfume oil. This is very thick, dense, very strong and insanely potent. We're talking a room filler and projection that keeps on pushing hours and hours on end, and my most favorite mango fragrance out there. On my skin, Borntostandout Black Mango lasts 12 plus hours easily, with projection being 5 plus meters for a good amount of hours, which eventually dries to a moderate and in the end a mild but noticeable skin scent. And I've given Borntostandout Black Mango a 10 out of 10 men's improvement rating. Not a fan favorite for many people, but this for me is one of the best fragrances out there, period. Gentlemen, that is it. That was my top 40 best fragrance releases of 2025. What do you guys think? Have you watched this far? Are you still here with me in the end? What is your favorite fragrance release of 2025? What is your most favorite fragrance discovery of 2025? Did I leave some fragrances out that you think should have been higher up on the list? What is a fragrance that you think missed the top 40 in your opinion? Leave all your comments down below in the comment section. I would love to see what you have to say down there. And if you enjoyed this video and stayed for this long, don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the Mancera Perfume YouTube channel for more videos about fragrances, grooming, style, fashion, skincare, fitness, watches, everything that will make you, gentlemen, the best possible versions of yourselves. The last few things that I want to ask you, gentlemen, is to smile more because it's free, and I want you to watch these two videos right here. This one here below is going to my latest upload rest. This one up here is going to be a video that the YouTube algorithm thinks you will enjoy.